God, I pray that you simply work through me this morning, that your voice may come through my lips and reach the people who are here. Amen and amen. Now, you know, I gotta say, we were in the back before the service was starting, and like the whole church was out already having social hour before church began. And I was like, man, I was like, are we in retrograde or something? Because everybody's just frisky and feisty and just, y'all aren't normally this awake. And he reminded me that we all got an extra hour of sleep. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, because y'all, yeah, y'all are usually, I mean, myself included, we are usually not this lively at the beginning of church. Like we wake up as church goes on and move through it. And I'm glad that Roy mentioned it. Happy All Saints Day. Happy All Saints Day. That's why I've got white on. This is one of those days where you can do, like if you're a liturgical nerd, you can do either color. It's okay. Like David's got the proper green on, and I've got the feast day white on, and so we're not we're good. We're good. So you don't have to mark our grade down because our colors don't match, or talk to us after the service because our colors don't match. We're in the midst of what folks call All Hallowtide. It's this 3-day period in the Christian calendar when we're encouraged to remember the dead. Right, and last night was All Hallows Eve, Halloween, right? How many people went out and dressed up? How many people?
I waited for the kids to come to me.
Okay, how many waited for the kids to come to them? How many people put up a sign on the door and say, "Kids, stay away"? I was writing a sermon. I have a pit bull. You know, it's not a good match. But those, really, it's out of blood for the children. You know, but those costumes that we wear on Halloween, you know, they come out of this church tradition where folks believe that veil between life and death was a little bit thinner during this 3-day period, and so they wore costumes to mask themselves from death. Like that's kind of where it all began. And yeah, there's all kinds of pagan stuff all through these traditions, and I'm not going to get into all that. And today is All Saints Day, and traditionally this is the day, and it's November 1st, it just happens to land on a Sunday this year, and this is the day, kind of in the Catholic tradition, that we celebrate all the saints, all right, all the faithful departed who kind of hit that saint level. And tomorrow is All Souls Day, which is for everybody else, which is for all the non-saints, for all the people who don't quite hit that level, but I'm going to kind of roll those two together today. You know, traditions around this are really fluid and they vary by culture and country. Like for those of you who've been down in the Southwest or down in Central America, Dia de los Muertos is a really just powerful tradition and holiday that's celebrated kind of officially tomorrow, but it's really kind of any time down there. But the important piece is that this is the time during the liturgical year, during our church year, where we kind of take a step back and look at death, right? Now, that's not the most exciting thing to think about. It's not going to pull people in necessarily into the church, but it's part of what we struggle with. It's part of what we deal with in trying to, figure out this kind of mystery of life. So even though it's a challenge to preach it and to teach it and to keep folks around, I kind of prefer talking about heavy stuff to light stuff a lot of the time. That's why I got into this whole church business. I didn't start coming back to church because everything was going well. You know, it's like, because I was just on a roll, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing so well, I think I'll go back to church. You know, it's like, no, I came back to church because things were not going well way back when, and as much as we can have joy in this place, this is also a place where we try to find those answers to those really, really tough questions. I prefer doing funerals to doing weddings for all kinds of reasons. There are no mothers of the brides, I think that God's closer in those moments around death. And it's amazing. It really is amazing. So knowing that it's All Saints Day, I don't want to get too down in the dumps, and so I use the readings for the day that were a little more interesting and exciting, and they dovetail right into, and we didn't even coordinate this, they dovetail right into where the Bible study group has decided to go, and I went to those apocalyptic texts, right? Those things that are scary. I mean, I don't know about you, they're a little different than what we normally read. It's not like, and from the Gospel of Mark, and it's another parable that we've heard 400 times, and we're just trying to wrestle something new out of it. You know, I think these passages today are a little more interesting, maybe because we just don't read them as much, or maybe we've never read them before, we've never heard them preached, and these books often get overlooked because we don't know what to do with them. All right, you know, the word apocalypse can be really scary. The texts can be really scary. There are trumpets and seals and plagues and, you know, fire, and it's just that, you know, we don't really know what to do with it. You know, we don't really want to read about the end of the world, and so we just kind of, you know, stay away from it. But, you know, that when you get into the text, that's really not what they're about. They're talking about all kinds of other stuff. You know, it's a little bit about the end of the world, but not all of it. You know, not all of it. So I want to talk about the books because I think they're really interesting, and then kind of bring it home and see what they can teach us today. Now, the Wisdom of Solomon usually doesn't show up in the lectionary readings because it's an apocryphal book, and that means that if you have a big Bible, it's in the middle between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And that means that not everybody accepts it as scripture, basically. Some folks do, some folks don't, and it's there in the middle. And it was originally written in Greek, which is different from those Hebrew scriptures that come before it. And was probably written around the time of Jesus' life. Maybe 50 years before, maybe 50 years after, but in that neighborhood. So this is like a contemporary piece that's being written, and around the time it was being written, the politics were amazingly stressful. Okay, it was written in Alexandria, not across the river, but in Egypt, right? It was written in northern Egypt. Alexandria was a huge city, had a huge population of Jews, and they think the person who wrote it was Jewish. And it was these tumultuous times with like Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and Cleopatra. Like that was all going on during the time that this was written, and the Roman Empire was just taking shape and standing up. And in the midst of all of that, the Jews in Alexandria, who had been there for hundreds of years, were stripped of their citizenship. They were kind of exiled within their own community, and the folks around them started worshiping the emperor instead of the gods that had been part of the worship world before. And so their world was just completely flipped upside down. It's like if somebody walked in and said, okay, all of you guys in this room, you're not United States citizens anymore. Have a nice day. And would be like, what? I'm assuming we're all citizens, but you know, I mean, that's a jump, but that you've been stripped of your citizenship. So their world was turned upside down, and in the midst of it, this book was written. And then when we go over to Revelation, which has always been a really scary book. I mean, it's just scary from the very beginning, right? And it's like this guy got a really good hit of acid and just started writing. I mean, seriously. I mean, oh my God, right? And who knows? But, you know, he was, that's just my amateur interpretation, but, you know, it's ascribed to somebody named John. The history of it is, it's probably not the apostle, just he would have been way too old, like the timing just doesn't work out, but it was some guy named John, whoever he was, who was exiled to this island between Greece and Turkey because he had been proselytizing. He had been trying to convert folks over to the Christian faith. He had been banished out to this island like 30 miles from the Turkish coast in the middle of nowhere. You know, really in the middle of nowhere, really, really small community, and there was war going on all around him. The Jewish-Roman wars were going on. He's in exile, so his world is turned upside down. So we've got these two pieces coming out of experiences where the folks who wrote them, the authors' worlds, had been turned upside down. And that's where it came out of. It came out of these times where they're on the outside looking in to kind of what their world used to be. They used to be a part of the community, and now they're not. They used to have some you know, train just left the station. They used to be a part of, and now they're on the outside, and they're looking for hope. They're looking for hope in that situation, and you know, I think we hit that place too. You know, maybe we've never been, I'm not going to ask, maybe we've never been exiled off to an island somewhere. Given the folks in this room, it's possible. But you know, maybe something has happened in our life that's caused just a huge upheaval. I think we've all experienced that. And this isn't saying anything, but we're all old enough that we've experienced that at some point in our life, some period of disorientation, some period of grief, some period of loss, where our whole world is turned upside down, and what we need more than anything else is hope. Hope that maybe not that it's going to get better, but just that you're going to make it somehow, some way, that you're going to make it through this, that somehow it's going to be okay, you know, whatever okay looks like. And on this All Saints Day, I think about the grief that surrounds death, you know, and we've all experienced that, and the hope that we need in those moments, you know, how do we power through, how do we muscle through when somebody around us dies, you know. This past week we were talking about beforehand, I've actually got 2 old friends of mine who died this week, and you know, and I wasn't close with them anymore. These are the people who I was close enough that I found out on Facebook, right? So it's like I was connected enough, but not entirely, didn't like find out through a phone call. And yeah, it's just like it happens, man. You know, we continue to experience these losses, and what's our hope for those people who pass, and what's the hope for ourselves going forward? And what these messages talk about, what these 2 passages talk about, is the hope for the folks who have passed. All right. And the wisdom of Solomon, and this is stuff I didn't know till I started reading up to study for this sermon, because guess what books you don't study in seminary? The Apocrypha. Yeah, you just don't. They just they don't fit into anything, so you just don't study them. And yeah, let me reread a couple of the lines here. But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish, they seem to have died, and their departure was thought to be a disaster, and their going from us to be their destruction, but they are at peace. For though in the sight of others they were punished, their hope is full of immortality. And this is what amazed me. This is the first time in our scriptural tradition, in our Judeo-Christian scriptural tradition, where the idea of immortality of the soul shows up. Very first time. And how key is that to so many of our understandings of what happens after death? How key, I know it's so key for mine that somehow, some way, people live on after death. And this is the very first time it shows up. Like, up until this time, in our tradition, and I'm using our in the grand sense, when you died, that was kind of it. You know, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, back you go, and that's it. And there was no concept of life beyond death in any kind of immortality of the soul kind of way. But this guy sitting in Alexandria with his whole world turned upside down, writes about, no, it's not over. It's not over when you die. It's just, your body is gone, but there's something else happening. There's something else happening and living on. And that we can find hope in that for the people who have passed, you know? And then we go over to Revelation, and what Revelation does, and it's only written maybe 100 years after the Wisdom of Solomon. I mean, they're pretty contemporaneous, you know, they're written pretty close to each other. And Revelation says it's not just for the saints, like All Saints Day, and it's not just for the Jews, it's for everybody. That whatever's happening, whatever this immortality piece where we live on, our spirits live on somehow, some way, is available to everybody, you know? And to really dig in and see that, you know, we didn't just come up with this like in the last 50 years, like Wisdom of Solomon said, no, you live on. There's some immortality our lives. And you know, it can feel really selfish to think, oh yeah, you know, I'll live forever, that kind of thing. Our spirits live forever, and it's some kind of narcissistic thing if you dig too deep, but that's not really what it's about. It's not really about the me, I, Lori, am going to be floating around haunting the world forever. I think that there would be enough people like bumping into each other by now that they would have, you know, filled up things. There's stuff going on that we don't understand. That's just it. There's stuff going on that we don't understand, where we know when the ancestors are near us. We know when the spirits are close. We know when people are around us who have passed. We know it and we feel it, and it's just there. It's just there, and our words are not enough to describe it. But you know what? We don't have to be saints to enjoy that promise of God. We don't have to be perfect to enjoy that promise of God. And you know, one of the things I love, and I started off with this, that one of the things I love about doing funerals, and it's like a Harold and Maude thing, if you know that movie. It's like I really just think I have that kind of like goth priest thing going on sometimes, where I just enjoy that stuff, is that everybody there can feel it. Everybody there can feel that presence, that spiritual presence of the person who had passed, or they want to feel it, or they know that it's coming. And it's something experiential. It's something that we know in our guts. In our guts. And, you know, I think of the folks who have passed, and I'm going to give us a couple of minutes to raise up the people who we want to raise up on this All Saints Day. And I don't know about you, but when I give them the space to move, I can feel those spirits. I can. You know, sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. Just like the Holy Spirit, sometimes shows up, sometimes it doesn't. But you can feel it. Like that, you down at the DC church, that place is haunted. I mean, that columbarium of dope, I'll tell you, anybody who tells you it's not hasn't been there long enough. It's just like, you know, it's like we can feel those spirits around us. So I want us to take a moment to really intentionally lift up the saints that have gone before us, who live on somehow, some way, even if it's just in our own memories, they live on. And as you are willing and able, you can just speak their names into existence, so that we may all fill this space with the saints who have come before us.
Muriel Gibson.
Earl Decker.
Larry Yuri.
Roger Walter.
Marvin Haywood Dunaway.
Anderson Williams, Pauline Williams, and Brad Wishon.
Jim Rand.
Violet Arnold.
Willis Wilkerson.
Michael Lewis.
Casey Thompson.
Dorothy Wright. And
Alan Law. Alan Hawk.
Lionel Clifford.
Velma Schneider.
Brenda
Julius Schneider.
Shane Crutchfield.
Stanley Barrymore.
Keith McElhaney.
Bernie York.
Chick McPherson.
Debbie and Adam Colson.
Lisa Everett and Leona Thompson.
Lorraine Wendell.
You feel it? You feel it? I feel it. For all the saints, spoken and unspoken, may they know that we remember them. May they know that we feel their presence, that we stand on their shoulders, and that we have hope and faith and trust in the God that we all believe in, and that they believe in, that they live in, and that somehow, some way we know and trust that they are basking. They are basking in God's presence here, now, and always. Amen. McMahon. Our hymn of response